yourself in the mirror and accept that if you weren't a racist, you condone what a racist did. So that's, to me, the same thing. It's the same thing. So
I agree with you.
Big show. You got a big following. So God bless you.
I appreciate it. Thank you. Hey, folks, the man with the pinky ring and the New York thing, forget about it. Bad Brad Berkwitt. And you're watching another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show on the Ringside Report web TV channel. Now, make sure you follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, that's at BadBradRSR. Well, today, folks, I told you I was going to bring you nothing but special guests this year who are moving humanity forward. Well, my guest is a fellow veteran, served in the Army, a 30-year federal prosecutor, and he is the host of the popular show watched around the world, Justice Matters, because it does matter. My guest today is the one and only Glenn Kirschner. All right, well, first off, I want to welcome you, Glenn, to the show. Thank you for coming on today.
Hey, my pleasure, Brad. Good to be with you.
Absolutely. We're going to do a 360, but before I get into about you and talk about all the other things, I always like to ask people who come on the show for the very first time, how have you been dealing with COVID the last couple of years? How do you get the stress off? Any personal stories or anything like that that you can share?
Yeah, so I'm vaxxed, I'm boosted. We've been lucky that nobody in our immediate circle, friends, family, have suffered with it. We've had people test positive, most recently with Omicron, but some of them are asymptomatic. Some of them only have mild symptoms. So we've been fortunate. We tried to be really careful. I've got a heavy bag in my garage. I've got a speed bag too. That helps. Although it's been some years since I actually sparred with anybody live, probably 7 or 8 years now. I got in the ring with a little Golden Gloves kid who was like 20-nothing years old, and it was like sparring with a mosquito. I could barely see his hands coming at me. He rocked me a few times, and I decided enough was enough. And now the heavy bag doesn't hit back, so I can usually hold my own with the heavy bag.
I got one in the garage, brother, so I know what you're saying. My days, and people say, "Oh, you're gonna box again? You're gonna come back?" I said, at 54, I'm lucky I can go anywhere, let alone come back to boxing. But okay, we're gonna start at the beginning, and I always tell my guests as well, if I have anything wrong in my research, because we know the internet is not perfect, far from it, feel free to correct me. I don't mind. I like my interviews to be as factually correct as they can be. So it looks like you were born in Brooklyn, New York, but grew up in New Jersey. Is that correct?
That's right. Born in Brooklyn. After a couple of years, my family moved to Jersey. My pop, who was a boxer himself and also an All-American college football player at Montclair State and a wrestler, ended up being a high school wrestling coach, a high school football coach. And the joke that I tell is that my pop coached at and got kicked out of every respectable high school football program in New Jersey. So for those of your viewers who are familiar with Jersey, my pop, Lou Kirschner, may he rest in peace, coached at Lodi, Passaic, Teaneck, Montville, Neptune, Point Pleasant. He was the head football coach at Neptune, New Jersey, on the Jersey Shore in the early 70s. And he was very proud of this. And I have always been very proud of this. He coached the Neptune high school football team to their first winning season in 25 years. Wow. I carry that around, and I'm very proud of my pop for that.
Okay. What part of Jersey? Lodi, a place like that, I've been many times. I'm a New Yorker. What part of New Jersey did you grow up in?
So started in Clifton,
okay,
then moved to Montville, and then we moved down to the Jersey Shore. I went to Point Pleasant Borough High School in the 70s, played football, wrestled, and went on to play college ball after that.
Okay. I'm going to read something because it'd be easier I want the viewers to know your love of football and talk about the legal stuff a little bit. So I'm going to read this for the viewers. You attended college at Washington and Lee University. Is that correct?
That's right.
All right. Where you studied journalism.
I did.
Okay. While at Washington and Lee, you were awarded an Army ROTC scholarship?
Correct.
Okay. And then you played for the Washington and Lee Generals football team as a center on the offensive line for 4 seasons and was elected by your teammates as one of the 3 team captains for your senior year. You earned Old Dominion Athletic Conference honors sophomore, junior, and senior years, and you were named a first team Kodak All-American College Football Player your senior year. As well, you were inducted into the Washington and Lee University Athletic Hall of Fame in 2009. Upon graduating from college in '84, you obtained an educational deferment of your military service to attend law school. While attending New England, am I right so far? Is this right?
Yep,
Okay.
all accurate.
Okay, while attending New England Law Boston, you earned 2 American Jurisprudence Awards in trial practice in wills, estates, and trusts, and was designated a Board of Trustees scholar after your 2nd year. Finally, you received your JD degree cum laude in 1987 and entered active duty with the U.S. Army Judge Advocate General Corps in January of '88. Is all of that correct?
All correct. God bless the people who populate Wikipedia. They do
Exactly.
a good job.
Yeah. So obviously there's football. So let's out of that 2 paragraphs, let's talk about your love of football and how you got into playing football and in college and all that.
Yeah, my pop was a football player. He described himself as, and I quote, the toughest SOB on the face of the planet. And he wasn't that far off. He was a tough guy. He was what I think we would refer to as a hard living guy. Loved his children fiercely, loved his grandchildren fiercely when they came along. And football was really his passion. He raised me on the New York Giants. So, of course, I grew up a New York Giants fan. I moved in 1981. The Army transferred me to the Washington, D.C. area. And over the years, the Washington football team started to creep in. I started to root for them for no good reason because they have been perennial losers, I think, courtesy of their owner. But that doesn't seem likely to change anytime soon. So, but he raised me to love football. It's funny, I never watched a college football game in my life because on Saturdays when I was growing up, I was on the sidelines and in the locker room with my pop as he was coaching. And then when I started playing high school, I was playing on Saturdays. College, I was playing on Saturdays. So my pop and I would always watch the pro football games on Sunday. And yeah, I developed a love of football through him very early on. Similarly, a love of boxing because he was a boxer and would take me to all the closed circuit heavyweight championship fights. So I grew up on boxing as well.
Okay, which we're going to talk about. I got it in here. Don't worry. We're going to talk some boxing. Okay, so the degree was in journalism. Was there somebody or something that made you want to go into journalism?
There sure was. And I always tell people, if you have a rocky start in college, take heart. I was a business major and I realized, I had no aptitude for economics and accounting and everything that came with studying business. I realized to count to 20, I needed to take my shoes off. That's how bad I was. I failed out of Washington and Lee University as a business major. I failed spectacularly. My faculty advisor was a gentleman named Clark Mollenhoff, Pulitzer Prize winning investigative journalist, former special press assistant to Richard Nixon when he was president. He took me under his wing. He said, Glenn, you suck at business. Here's what we're going to do. You're going to withdraw from the university so you can drop all of your failing grades. You're going to reapply the next day. You're going to come back. You're going to study journalism under me. You're going to take all of my classes, which I did. He gave me A's in all of his classes, though I doubt I deserved it. And I became a journalism major. I loved the study of journalism. I enjoyed the practice of journalism, though I never wanted to be a journalist. But what I realized is much of it involved interviewing people, getting the facts, and then writing about them in a way that was understandable to everybody who would be reading it. I found that was a great platform to use to then move into not only the study of law, but a career in prosecution.
Okay, and that was my next question, which you answered. Okay, about going into law. All right, once you graduated law school, you joined the Army, as I said, and worked in the Army JAG Corps. Talk about your time in the military. And first of all, thank you for your service. You're a fellow veteran, and I appreciate that.
Thank you for yours as well, Brad. And I appreciate that. It was my
welcome.
honor to serve. So I started out active duty in 1988. The Army assigned me to Fort Richardson, Alaska, which was in Anchorage, beautiful part of the country if you've never been there. And I spent nearly the entire 3 years up there as what we call a trial counsel, an Army JAG prosecutor. So I jumped right into the courtroom fresh out of law school. I was not equipped to be a prosecutor. I was not particularly good at prosecution. I had defense attorneys hand my butt to me in my first several trials. It took me a while to get my trial legs up under me. What I realized was I had a love of trying cases. And I also had a love of working with victims, and in murder cases, the family members of homicide victims. And so those two things kind of came together for me. The Army gave me great experience trying cases, court-martialing soldiers for every offense you can imagine. And I did that for 3 years. And then the Army reassigned me to the U.S. Army Legal Services Agency, which is here in Northern Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where to the Government Appellate Division, that's where Army JAGs basically are appellate court prosecutors. After soldiers get convicted at court-martial, they appeal their conviction. We were the appellate lawyers for the Army that would defend those convictions on appeal. I got to do some amazing appellate litigation like espionage, death penalty cases, and then a lot of the more routine cases. The really nice thing that I don't know that many people know about is the criminal justice system in the Army, and indeed all the military services. They have their own military courts, but then there's a direct line of appeal to the United States Supreme Court. So I also got to write briefs when soldiers would try to appeal their conviction up to the Supreme Court. And I got my name on the front of the booklets that went to the Supreme Court justices. I'm sure none of them ever saw it. I'm sure they had their clerks read it. But it was a really exciting and vibrant practice of criminal law. Anybody who wants to be a criminal litigator, you could do no better than starting as an Army JAG, Air Force JAG, Navy, Marine Corps JAG. It is a wonderful practice of law for young lawyers.
Okay. Tough question I got to ask you because you're a veteran, and any veteran comes on my show, I ask this, and to get your opinion. January 6th with the insurrection that Trump played a huge part in, as we both know.
Yeah.
Any veteran that after January 6th, if that bridge wasn't the bridge that was too far because they were traitors, how do you feel about veterans today that still after January 6th, if it wasn't enough, everything he did during his administration with the suckers and losers and so on, how do you feel personally about veterans today that support Donald Trump after January 6th?
First of all, let's talk about the veterans or the active duty members who participated in the attack on the Capitol, which was an attack on our democracy.
Yes, it was.
Anybody who is on active duty or who is retired should be restored to active duty, should be investigated and court-martialed, as should Michael Flynn.
Yes.
Period. How do I feel about all the soldiers and sailors and seamen and airmen that still support Donald Trump? I love them for serving their country. I would tell them that they couldn't be more misguided in their support of a criminal and treasonous president. Here's the thing, Brad, and I'm not trying to be mean or snarky. Apparently, not everybody has the ability to discern truth from propaganda. And when you have the president of the United States, I served under every president from Reagan to Trump. I was in the federal government, but I could discern when I was being handed a load of political nonsense or worse, propaganda. Not everybody can. So when the president of the United States stands up and says, your vote has been stolen from you, your president has been unlawfully taken from you, and if you don't fight like hell, you're not going to have a country anymore. There are people who hear that and don't have the ability to discern it for the propaganda it is. So when people walk into court and they say, I was doing what my president told me to do, shouldn't I be able to do what the president of the United States tells me to do? That's not a legal defense to the prosecutions that my friends and colleagues are conducting out of the DC U.S. Attorney's Office of the insurrectionists. It's not a defense, but I understand it. I understand how they could get sucked into the propaganda because not everybody has the ability, the cognitive ability, the educational level to separate the truth from the propaganda being offered them by high government officials. I wish we all did. I wish we all saw it for what it was, but we don't.
Right. And I mean, I hear you, and I pretty much agree with your answer. I absolutely agree. Flynn should be brought back and try. He should be in prison. He's a traitor. I agree with you that they can't separate, but I would think we would probably on a sheet of paper 100%. It breaks my heart because I do respect that they serve, but I'm also I hear you, but it's so hard to not see it because he does it every single day and he doesn't stop. It's like you defended this country, we raised our hand for the Constitution, not to the flag, to the Constitution, as you well know, and they keep going with it and he keeps showing them. But okay, that's a fair answer. After doing 6 years on active duty, you got out in June of 1994. You joined the United States Attorney for the District of Columbia office as a prosecutor / assistant U.S. Attorney. And it looks like you spent 24 years at the DC USAO office. And then you retired on June 1st, 2018. Is all of that correct?
It's all correct. Yeah, I had a great nearly quarter of a century run as a federal prosecutor in the Department of Justice, specifically at the DC U.S. Attorney's Office, one of the prosecution field offices of the Department of Justice.
Okay. During those years, Glenn, was there one case that I know it might be a tough question, but is there one case you were most proud of?
No, not one case I was most proud of. So I spent 22 of my 30 years handling murder cases in Washington, D.C., including as chief of homicide. So I supervised 30 federal homicide prosecutors, and I was responsible for overseeing all murder cases in D.C. I was very proud of the prosecutors that I served with and that I got to supervise. I was proud of every case I handled, and I always stayed in the courtroom. Even as chief of homicide, I always tried cases with my junior prosecutors because that selfishly was what I loved to do. I was proud of every case where, in a murder case, the victim's family came away from the experience saying we were well served by the prosecutor who handled this case. Win, lose, or draw. And what I learned over those years and why I still work with homicide families to this day is that it's not necessarily about the outcome. It's whether you, as the government official responsible for helping those families through the most difficult ordeal of their lives. Think about it, Brad. We lose loved ones to natural disease all the time, and we know it's coming, and we mourn and we grieve, but we can prepare for it. Your son or your daughter or your spouse, your brother, your partner, your grandparent doesn't come home one day because they were taken by violent crime. That blows a hole in the family that never fully heals, in my experience. But what I learned was it was all about the process. It wasn't about the outcome. So as long as I included and respected the family of the homicide victim from day one, from the moment of arrest through the day there was a verdict in the case or a sentence in the case or action on an appeal or probation or parole, if they felt like they were respected and included and heard and honored and valued as was their loved one, they felt they were comfortable with the process. They felt like their government worked for them. And I had cases where we lost. The jury found the defendant not guilty, and I would go back to the witness room with the family, and we would all cry together, and they would thank me profusely because of the experience they had going through the process. Nothing was more gratifying than that. We couldn't even win a conviction, and yet the family of the victim still felt honored.
Because you showed them respect. Honored. Yeah, because you showed them respect. And that's I mean, it's a huge thing. And especially in the judicial system, and you know this way better than me. You showed them respect. You looked at them as human beings. And unfortunately, a lot of times you see that that's not the case. So I commend you for that. Under the Trump years, I know you pretty much retired you retired in 2018, so his second year in office. But Was your office affected under Trump, Sessions, and Bill Barr?
So here's the good news from my perspective. I worked for 10 U.S. attorneys. The U.S. attorney who first made me a federal prosecutor when I left the Army and joined the Department of Justice was Eric Holder.
Right.
And I stand on Eric's shoulders. My first chief of homicide was Bob Mueller. I stand on Bob's shoulders the same way I stand on Clark Mollenhoff's shoulders and Gary Fallon, my college football coach's shoulders. That's why I have been fortunate enough to accomplish what I've accomplished. The good news from my perspective was when I was in the Department of Justice while Trump was president, my U.S. attorney was somebody named Jessie Liu. Your viewers might remember her. She was the one who basically did the right thing as United States attorney for the District of Columbia every day she was permitted to do there, up to and including investigating Andrew McCabe and saying, there's no crime to be charged here. And that's when Trump and Bill Barr ran her out on a rail. Why? Because she wouldn't bring bogus, I'm trying to keep it clean, bogus charges. I try to keep it bogus charges against Andy McCabe to do Donald Trump's dirty bidding. She wouldn't do it. So they ran her out on a rail and they started to install lackeys like Tim Shea, Tim Sherwin, and all these other clowns who did all the dirty bidding, like getting rid of Mike Flynn's case and going easy on Roger Stone and all this kind of horse shit. Okay, I'm going to go to horse shit. So I had Jessie Liu. I retired out of the U.S. Attorney's Office under Jessie Liu, a great public servant, but then she was run out after I left, and he started to soil the United States Attorney's Office for the District of Columbia, Bill Barr and Donald Trump, by putting lackeys in the job.
And he did that in the White House. He did that in his business. Okay, justice matters, and it certainly does matter. You started your very popular podcast show. It looks like about a year ago. I went back and looked at all the videos. It's been a little bit over a year. Talk about the evolution, because I was watching some of the early ones when you had the whiteboard and you were doing your thing. I said, yeah, as a fellow podcaster, how we reinvent it. We said, oh, this works, or that might not work, and this works. So talk for the viewers who love your show. You got over 300,000 plus subscribers. Your videos, I get a kick out of it. You hit refresh on one of Glenn's videos. It's at 200 views. You hit refresh, or it goes to a thing and it redoes something, and it's at 900 views. I mean, the minute you post, they come to it. That means you're putting out good content, and I commend you. So talk about the evolution of your podcast show.
Yeah, this has been a fun evolution and a learning experience for me. Let me tell you, I never planned to spend 30 plus years in the federal government as a prosecutor and then transition to running my mouth on TV or having a YouTube channel. That was not the plan. But I retired on June 1st of 2018. I had the good fortune to know some folks at MSNBC, and they said, you want to try to talk on TV, be a legal analyst. So they put me on a train, believe it or not, June 2nd, the day after I retired, up to 30 Rock in New York, and they put me on air 9 times in 3 days. Now, it was sink or swim, and I took on a lot of water, but I think I swam, and they ended up offering me a contract to be a legal analyst, and I've been doing that for the past 4 years. So when it was all about the Mueller report, with Bob Mueller being my former boss and mentor, when it was all about impeachment, there was lots and lots and lots of legal analyst work for the MSNBC and NBC News legal analysts. So I was on sometimes 6 times a day, sometimes, it was very, very, very busy. Then when COVID hit, things started to slow down on the legal analyst front. And then it was all the medical analysts who were getting all the airtime, as well they should have, because that was the focus of our concern as a nation. So my wife and my wife is my partner. Everything we do here is, I made this from, materials I got at Lowe's. Okay. Everything I do with my own hands. My wife helps. I don't have people. Everything we do is an all volunteer effort. So my wife and I put our heads together. We're like, okay, the legal analyst work is slowing down on TV a little bit. Now I teach criminal justice at George Washington University. I have a homicide family nonprofit. So I have plenty to do. But I felt like I want to keep getting the legal word out. I want to get every day, I want to get people, whatever I'm seeing unfolding in our government on the legal front, give them 5, 8, 10, 12 minutes to explain it in layman's terms. I'm a gutter kid from Jersey. I don't know anything other than layman's terms. I never talk to my juries like some highfalutin lawyer because I wasn't a highfalutin lawyer. My wife created the YouTube channel. We had no idea what we were doing. I'm glad you went back to some of the old ones a couple of years ago. I'm sitting on my couch and my wife's holding the phone and I'm talking about the Trump Crimes Commission and why we need to hold Donald Trump accountable for the crimes we see in the harsh light of day. And then it developed. She and I worked on it. We refined it. We fine-tuned it. We still do it all ourselves. We do it all very low tech. But we do it every day and it seems to resonate with people. So it's grown to more than 300,000 subscribers and I'm very heartened by it. I get a lot of feedback from it. And so that is kind of the evolution of Justice Matters, my YouTube channel. And now I'm addicted to it and I feel the need to get a legal analysis video out every day, sometimes too, because I think people deserve context. And as talking heads on TV, we get 2 minutes, 3 minutes. I'm going on with Eamon at 3:45 as soon as we're done here. I was on this morning with Jose. I'll be on the last word with Lawrence O'Donnell tonight. But I only get 2 minutes. And Brad, I can't tell you what you need to know in 2 minutes about the new Georgia State Special Grand Jury that's about to hopefully bang out Donald Trump and company. So the YouTube channel, Justice Matters, gives me the opportunity to give people context, give them everything they need on an issue to make up their own mind about what they're seeing and how to act on it.
And you made a point, and I thoroughly enjoy it because you don't do 7 hours and like you're lost in it because you know as well as I do and much better than me. There's so much coming at us, not even daily, hourly. It's like the news cycles are 30 seconds with anything with Trump because it's on to the next thing. So I appreciate it. And the viewers, my viewers that were happy to see you come on, they love that you do it in layman terms, that you don't use $500 words and you don't talk down to your viewers, you talk to your viewers. And that's why I really think, besides you have a great mind, but I also think that's why your show does really well, Glenn, because you talk to people like they're people and not over their head so they can understand it, because it's a lot to take in. And then you throw COVID in and you throw, everything, inflation and all the stuff that's going on in our daily lives, but we still want to be connected. So I commend you on your show. I watched the evolution of it and I thoroughly enjoy it, and absolutely keep doing it because your viewers love it. You deserve every subscriber you got. You're welcome. All right, I want to go into some talking points, some more questions with the Trump stuff. Let's see where we're at. So much, like I said, coming out every day about Trump and his family. Many of my, what we call the BBB crew, are to the point they feel nothing is going to stick to Trump. If you had to, and you've probably been asked this question before, but if you had to pick one thing that your years of experience makes you feel that I really do feel they're going to get him on this one, because it seems like this, we all know John Gotti. Some of us know him a little bit better than others, but he was known for a long time as the Teflon Don. And we know that Trump thinks he's a gangster and he acts like one with the fifth in the way he carries on. People are getting impatient, though, when Attorney General Garland had that press conference, including me. I watched every bit of it. I was like, okay, some of this is reassuring. We don't know the ins and outs like you do, but is there, there might be a couple, but is there one that you feel strongly that, hey, there's a very good chance? And when I say convicted, I don't mean pay a penalty. I'm talking about put him in an orange suit behind bars.
So I think the strongest case that I see, one of the strongest cases, is the Georgia state election crimes. Why? Because it's all captured in real time on a recorded telephone call. And when you say, look, I just need you guys to give me one more vote than I need to win, go find a vote that fell off the back of a truck and corruptly declare me the winner of this election. That's a crime that a novice prosecutor could prove to a jury in their sleep. So that is why I was thrilled to see DA Fani Willis ask for the special Georgia grand jury, which has a subpoena power. It's an interesting grand jury process that they have in Georgia. It's a little unusual, but there's no reason that case shouldn't be indicted. There's no reason that case can't be won in court. My other concern is Donald Trump has committed so many crimes that we can't focus on just one. I would have, if I were making the decisions, taken volume 2 of the Mueller report, which meticulously documents and details as many as 10 felony obstruction of justice charges that Trump committed, I would have attached that to an application for an arrest warrant, presented it to a federal judge in a perfect world the day after Joe Biden was sworn in, and 10 judges out of 10 would have issued that arrest warrant. Why? Because there is evidence that is so far beyond probable cause, which is the standard to issue an arrest warrant, contained in the Mueller report. And Bob Mueller famously testified, the day Donald Trump leaves office, he can be indicted. And he hasn't been. And that's why I fear we're losing confidence in our Department of Justice. We're losing patience. We are questioning whether the rule of law is being applied fairly, not just, for example, to the foot soldiers of the insurrection, the mopes who were attacking the Capitol, but the command structure of the insurrection, because they're running around. What are they doing? They're continuing to offer the gullible, the big lie, and they're continuing to recruit the foot soldiers for Insurrection 2.0. We have to put a stop to it. So I believe the obstruction of justice that he committed while president, if we don't attack that, that's the Department of Justice giving the next president permission to do it all over again and then some. And our nation, our democracy cannot survive another 4 years of what we just have been through. Another thing, I really wish somebody would hold him accountable for the lies he told to the American people about COVID, about the pandemic, because that has resulted in needless COVID deaths, avoidable COVID deaths. I brought all kinds of unique theories of prosecution and murder cases in Washington, D.C. This one is not unique. When Donald Trump lied to us and then he was caught on tape with Bob Woodward telling the truth about how deadly and how transmissible the pandemic was, that's an easy involuntary manslaughter case to make because it only requires three things: grossly negligent conduct, the lies about the deadly nature of it, that your conduct was reasonably likely to result in death or serious bodily injury of another, which it is when you're lying to people about what? A deadly pandemic, and that you thereby caused the death of people. Causation in the law means your conduct was a substantial factor in bringing about avoidable deaths. Again, you can prove those three elements to a jury's satisfaction. I'm quite confident he should be held accountable because these are crimes against humanity.
And I actually had, I'm to jump and then come back to the other thing. I actually put a note in here. It was mid-September. And I remember when you said this in mid-September 2020, you went on record, which I totally agree with what you just said. So my question, which was a little bit further down off of that talking point, was why in the hell haven't they done it?
Because no prosecutor wants to be the first to indict a former president of the United States. But Brad, every prosecutor is going to want to be the second.
Yeah, of course.
I think maybe it's Fani Willis who's got the gumption and the backbone and the determination to stand up and do it. And I think she may be the first in Georgia because she's got the goods on him. And then every other prosecutor will be like, okay, the white hot glare of media and world attention is on the Georgia prosecution. But you know what? Trump committed crimes in my jurisdiction, in my backyard too. So I better get on the prosecution bandwagon. Then you're going to see dominoes, boom, boom, boom. And Trump is going to get indicted all over the place, I predict.
Okay. Off of that talking point, as you just said, if he gets convicted, and rightfully so, see, I can't stand when people say, well, it won't, the country will look horrible. The country already looks horrible because of him. Stop that mentality. Everybody, you, me, whomever, if we do something wrong, and at that level, should be held accountable. I don't care who you are. I don't care if it was my own child. If he did something he needs to be held accountable for, you must be, because you send the message to people, and that's the problem that we got now, is Trump appears to this point to get away with all of this stuff. They're the party of law and order. And I don't care what party you belong to, but they're party of law and order, but they don't care about the police that got the shit kicked out of them. And I don't care what their politics were on that particular day either. They did their job. They protected Democrats, Republicans, and independents, and whatever else is in government. They did their job, even if they were Trump supporters that particular day. But the party of law and order doesn't give a flying you-know-what about those particular ones. They attack Bannon and they attack all these guys and Officer Goodman, who were true heroes, who saved their asses. but I hate to say it, but I don't hate to say it because it's the truth. The Republicans have forgotten completely all the pictures of them screaming and laying on the ground and all of this stuff, or Mitt Romney running the other way because Goodman said, turn around or you go into it. And Pence, it was just another day in January who they said hang him. And I honestly believe, Glenn, if they would have got him that day, they would have hung him. I honestly believe that. And I don't do sensationalism, journalism, or any type of stuff like that. That's what I believe in my heart. But you had put out some funny tweets about Eric Trump, and you had some stuff on your show. Over 500 times, if I remember you saying correctly, he took the fifth. Did he take the fifth when they asked him what his name was? I take the fifth. I mean, that's how ridiculous it is. But Trump is quoted as saying years ago, the father, only gangsters take the fifth. But nobody cares. I shouldn't say nobody. Their cult doesn't care, doesn't matter. You could play the clip. If you shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, they still vote for him, and they would. How else, and correct me if I'm wrong, the average person sees somebody like Eric Trump, or anybody for the matter, you or me, take the fifth over 500 times. How can you not make the assumption that they're guilty of sin?
Not even an assumption. Here's the way the Fifth Amendment works. You're only permitted to plead the fifth if you have evidence that would tend to incriminate you if you were required to testify truthfully. Let me tell you, Brad, people may not know this, but when witnesses go into the grand jury and they plead the fifth, that's not the end of it, because I've put witnesses in the grand jury and they pleaded the fifth, but they did that because they were loyal to the defendant and they just didn't want to testify, or they did that because they were scared to death of being snitches. And if they told the grand jury what they knew about crime in DC, they'd go back to their neighborhood and they would pay for it, which we took very seriously. That's why we have, tons of witness protection programs. But you can only plead the fifth if your truthful testimony would tend to incriminate you. So if I had somebody, let's say the defendant's girlfriend, who I knew had incriminating information against the defendant, and she's like, I'm pleading the fifth. Said, no, now we're going to walk across the street to the chief judge and we're going to litigate your Fifth Amendment invocation. And you'll get a lawyer, and this happens in a matter of like 48 hours. And you have to, if the judge determines during that litigation that no, she was just trying to protect her boyfriend, she didn't commit a crime, so she doesn't have a Fifth Amendment right against her own self-incrimination, or she was scared of being a snitch, she doesn't have a right against self-incrimination, then the judge would compel her, order her to testify. So you're only supposed to be able to invoke the fifth if you actually committed crimes, if your truthful testimony would actually incriminate you, which I am quite sure Eric Trump's testimony would incriminate him, and probably his father and his brother and his sister and the Trump organization. So I don't mock him for pleading the fifth. He has an absolute constitutional right to do it. I do mock his father for saying only mobsters plead the fifth. The other thing people should know is when you plead the fifth in a criminal case, it can never be used against you because the Constitution gives you that protection. But when you plead the fifth in a civil case, like Eric Trump did in New York, it can be used against you. Here's how. When New York DA Tish James ultimately brings this fraud suit against Trump and his organization, which is coming, the one that they were just subpoenaed in, Eric Trump, the evidence about him pleading the fifth will be presented to the jury in the civil case. And here's how that will play out. The jury will be told, there will be evidence of the transcript presented to them of Eric Trump pleading the fifth 500 times. And the judge will instruct that jury, you can hold that against Eric Trump and potentially others, and you can draw negative inferences based on it. And it can be part of your evidence, your determination in your verdict in this case. You can use it to rule against Eric Trump and company. That's a difference between invoking the fifth in the civil case and in a criminal case. It can never be used against you in a criminal case, but it can be in a civil case. And that's why at the end of the day, Tish James is going to kick their butts in this civil fraud case that she's going to bring against Trump and company.
Okay. As a person that worked, just out of curiosity, the years that you were in that office, did you prosecute or did your office Rayford Edmonds?
I did not. That was a prosecution before my time. I interviewed him to potentially call him as a witness in a later RICO trial that I prosecuted. We opted not to call him, but it was some colleagues of mine who prosecuted Rayful.
Okay. As the guy that served honorably in the military and then all the years you were in office, when you saw, and I think we would probably agree that most presidents don't have always, they're not always perfect on their pardons. You can always debate pardons. But I don't think we've ever seen, me personally, ever seen worse pardons than Trump with Stone, Flynn, Manafort, and Bannon, those particular ones. When you saw him pardon those particular guys, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stone was on his way to prison, right?
3 days from his reporting
3 days.
date.
Flynn was convicted of lying, right?
Well, technically not convicted because you're not convicted until you're sentenced, but he pleaded guilty twice in front of two different federal court judges.
Okay. Bannon, what was Bannon's deal with the money? Didn't he steal money from a fund or something like that they accused him of?
Bannon set up a bogus foundation called the We Build the Wall Foundation. He grifted off of Donald Trump's base. He stole that money, and then Donald Trump pardoned him after he was indicted. We don't know if Donald Trump got a cut of the money or not. Have no idea. And we don't know if Bannon was ever made to repay that money. That is a horrific pardon.
Okay. Well, I mean, when you saw it, you had to be as disgusted as I was, right? Just shook your head.
And I think the Roger Stone pardon is the best one to use as an example of why the Department of Justice has to attack corrupt pardons. So Roger Stone, a criminal associate of Donald Trump's. Roger Stone, who was the go-between between WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and the Trump campaign. I know that because I was in court for that whole trial when they dragged Steve Bannon in by the scruff of his shirt, and they cross-examined him, saying who was the go-between between WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign for purposes of weaponizing the Hillary Clinton emails. And Bannon said, humma. Oh, you can't answer that question? Let's go to your grand jury testimony where you said, and I quote, Roger Stone was the go-between between WikiLeaks and the Trump campaign. Oh, yeah, I guess so. What a punk that man is. What a weak, spineless punk. That he couldn't even stand up and tell the truth like he told it to the grand jury.
Right.
So Roger Stone lied to Congress in the Trump-Russia investigation over and over and over again. He also threatened a witness. He also obstructed a congressional proceeding. He was convicted of all 7 counts. And remember, Donald Trump told him in so many words, in tweets and otherwise, stay strong.
Yep.
Don't snitch.
Yep.
Don't flip. Don't tell anybody about what I did. And he did that. He didn't snitch. He didn't flip. He stayed strong and he got convicted. Then 3 days before he was to report to prison to begin his 40-month sentence, he was interviewed by Feynman, a journalist, and he said, here's what I want, Donald Trump. I stayed strong for you, and it wasn't easy. I stood up for you. I didn't snitch on you. I want a sentence commutation. Now, mind you, he didn't even ask for a pardon.
Right.
He asked for a sentence commutation. That day, the president commuted his sentence, and he went on to pardon him later. And as Judge Amy Berman Jackson said at Roger Stone's sentencing date, Mr. Stone, you weren't convicted for standing up for Donald Trump. You were convicted for covering up for Donald Trump. What I've just described, Brad, is a course of conduct that is easily provable as a conspiracy to obstruct justice between Roger Stone and Donald Trump. And that is why we have to attack corruptly delivered presidential pardons. We cannot endorse that by letting it lie. That's not water under the bridge. That's something we still need to attack.
I agree. I agree with you 100%. All right, let's segue into the fun random questions. But I added a couple that I don't normally ask because I know that you like boxing. So let's talk a little boxing. Did you box at, you said Golden Gloves, did you box at an amateur in Jersey?
I boxed at like a PBA league, Homedale Police PBA.
Yeah, Police Benevolent Association. Yeah.
Yeah, I mixed it up as a kid, but I never like officially had amateur fights. We would go, we would work out, we'd get in the ring and we'd do it. And I was literally sparring until about 7 or 8 years ago, and I was getting my bell rung pretty good. And I'm like, okay, I can't do this anymore. But I was never like a formal official fighter.
Right. I love and for the young heads, they won't know this, but I know it. When you said ham and eggery, I haven't heard that term in a long time. Like when they used to say "Good night, Irene" when a fighter would get knocked out. Okay, so
I was a ham and egger. That's what I was. At my best, I was a ham and egger.
That's okay. Who is your favorite fighter of all time?
It's got to be Muhammad Ali. I liked guys like Kenny Norton.
He's a friend of mine.
I loved Smoking Joe.
Mm-hmm.
I liked Ernie Shavers, the Acorn. I mean, I even liked the Bayonne Bleeder,
Chuck Wepner.
I mean, So I loved all of these people. And and part of it is because, my dad would take me to all the closed circuit heavyweight fights at the Garden or at the Garden State Arts Center in New Jersey or wherever. And that I came up with boxing in my blood. My hands were always slow, so I was always getting hit more than I was hitting. But there's just nothing like Muhammad Ali. And I still go down the rabbit hole of YouTube videos all the time. I love Mike Tyson's power. I love George Foreman's heart. I mean, I liked all of these men. And then I liked the Marvin Haglers and obviously the Sugar Ray Leonards and the Roberto Duran's Hands of Stone. Are you kidding me? And even Pacquiao, who always struck me as a later day Roberto Duran. So I loved all these guys, Thomas Hearns. But there's just nobody like Muhammad Ali.
Right. He was. How
about you? I would love to hear your take on who your favorite fighters were.
Well, my favorite fight of all time was Aaron the Hawk Pryor, who fought Alexis Arguello twice. And my next question, when I ask you, but I'll answer it first, is favorite fight of all time. My favorite personal fight was November 12th, 1982 in the Orange Bowl. And it was Aaron the Hawk Pryor was a WBA junior middleweight champion. Alexis, the thin man, explosive thin man, was moving up to try to win his fourth title. And he faced Aaron, and it was messed up because Aaron's my number one and Alexis was my number two. And they had to fight each other. And I don't know if you remember the fight, but Aaron stopped him, destroyed Alexis, and then they had a rematch and Aaron stopped him earlier. But not to plug my book, but to plug my book. All the people you just said, the heavyweights, Kenny was a friend of mine. Ernie is a friend of mine. My book is called Boxing Interviews of a Lifetime. I interviewed all those guys for my book. Chuck Wepner, all of those guys.
All right, I got to read that. What's the title again?
I'll send you a link. Boxing Interviews of a Lifetime. I even interviewed another one that fought Ali later in his career, Ron Lyle, which Ron Lyle had that great fight with George Foreman where they knocked each other down. So what is your personal favorite fight of all time?
I don't have a favorite fight. I mean, you got to love the Rumble in the Jungle, right? You got to love, I mean, literally, if Ali Frazier, Ali Foreman, I will watch those over and over and over again, but I can't say I have a favorite fight.
Okay. And one more boxing question. If there was something you could change in the sport of boxing, what would you like to see changed?
I mean, I would like to see it come back in a way that, it was so exciting and attractive. I understand it's violent. I understand there are dangers attendant to boxing, and maybe we can reduce that. Maybe headgear helps. I don't know, but I wish it would make a comeback where it would excite the younger generation in a way that maybe I'm just old and crotchety and in my 60s now. I don't see the younger generation interested in it. Maybe because we've become such a risk-averse society that everybody's looking down on boxing now. The same could be said of football. I would like to see it raise its profile so that it could attract people to the sport again, while maybe building in some safety mechanisms that we didn't have back in the day.
Right. Yeah, and I think one of the things that they need to do, and I'm not a UFC fan, but I give it credit. In boxing, and the guys that you talked about, Hearns and Duran and Sugar Ray and Aaron, the ones I talked about, at that particular time in boxing, the best fought the best to be called the best, Marvin Hagler and all of them. Today, you get one loss on your record in boxing, it's like your career is over. It's ridiculous. Also, another sad thing, I don't know how well you keep up with it. You have these internet or YouTube sensations, the Paul brothers, fighting in sanctioned bout, even an exhibition, and it makes the sport look horrible. Or when Floyd, very best fighter of his generation, can't stand him personally, and I don't like what he's done to the sport. He's bastardized it. He's monetized it and bastardized it. I have no problem making money. That's fine. They need to make money. But when he fought Conor McGregor to go to 50-0 for a guy that had never had a professional fight, was a UFC guy, and he basically carried him. The fight was fixed. He finally decided to knock him out. And they both made, over $100 million. It didn't help the sport. It didn't help the sport for people like us. They're like, and I just got inducted last year into the Florida Boxing Hall of Fame. And I was with some, around some legendary fighters, Antonio Tarver and the Glenn Johnsons and the guys that were in the audience, But I agree with you. They have to figure out a way to excite the younger base. Okay. Favorite genre of movies?
Wow. I got to tell you, I love a good comedy. I love a good action adventure. But if there were a genre that, and I hate to go right back to boxing, my favorite movie of all time, that's an easy one, is the first Rocky, the original Rocky, period. Every line backward and forward I can recite. It would be those kind of underdog movies, the movies where, the underdog fights like hell. Mm-hmm. And he succeeds, which doesn't mean he wins, mm-hmm. but he succeeds. There's nothing like the original Rocky to drive that home. He lost the fight, but I'll be damned if he didn't succeed. Those kind of movies are the movies that give me goosebumps still.
Okay. And you're a true Rocky fan, so I'm going to throw a trivia question at you. The gangster in Rocky was Willie Chi-Chi in another my personal favorite movie of all time. Do you know what movie that is? Where he was Willie Chi-Chi?
No, I remember you mean the head mobster, the loan shark who was sending Rocky on jobs?
Joe Spinell. Joe Spinell is the actor.
Yeah, I can picture his face, but no, I can't answer the question.
Willie Chi-Chi was Michael Gazzo's Clemenza in Godfather. Well, he was in 1 and 2, but in part 2, Willie Chi-Chi was with Frankie Five Angels. I don't know how well you remember The Godfather, but that Joe Spinell, the actor that played the gangster in Rocky that he was, collecting for, that was Willie Chi-Chi in The Godfather. Okay, and you answered the next one, favorite movie, Rocky. Do you have a favorite actor?
I got to see Al Pacino on Broadway in American Buffalo, and yeah. I think some of his movies I like, some I'm not crazy about, but when he's on stage, you can't take your eyes off of him. And some stuff that comes across as over the top in the movies, when he's on stage, it's just nothing but powerful. So I'm going to say theater actor, Al Pacino was my favorite of all time in American Buffalo. Beyond that, as far as like a straight movie actor, I can't say I have a favorite. Okay.
Do you have a favorite actress?
I can't say I have a favorite actress either.
Okay. Do you have a favorite musical band or a couple you really like?
Yeah, so I just had the pleasure of interviewing little Steven Van Zandt, Bruce Springsteen's lead guitarist, who,
I know.
Artists Against Apartheid. I mean, mm-hmm. he fought like hell to try to bring down apartheid in South Africa, and he's somebody who's the theme of justice runs through everything he does, from his first album, Men Without Women, through his most recent album, Summer of Sorcery. He's just a genius. But it has to be Bruce. It has to be Bruce. Now, I love guys, lesser known guys like Warren Zevon, mm-hmm. A guy named David Barrowald, who is just a genius. But it's got to be Bruce and the E Street Band. Seen him more times than I can count. Saw him in the clubs on the Jersey Shore, the Stone Pony, and elsewhere. That is the heart of rock and roll. Okay. So he's got to be my favorite.
Gotcha. Now, you mentioned Warren Zevon. Of course, he's famous for the song about Werewolf in London. But do you know he wrote a song about my paisan, Ray Boom Boom
Mancini's fighting Bobby Chacon.
Yep.
Oh, yeah. Hurry on home. Boom Boom Mancini's fighting Bobby Chacon.
Yep. That's it. Okay. I'm assuming with your answer about Bruce that your favorite concert would be a Bruce Springsteen concert.
Yeah, it would probably even in his later years. I saw him back in the 70s, but I saw him at Nat Stadium here in DC. He played 3 hours and 45 minutes. Wow. He played his whole 1973 catalog, and I was in heaven.
Okay. Now, this is solo. Do you have a favorite male singer that just not in a band, but male singer, or somebody you really like?
Favorite male singer? I'm going to have to go back to the Marvin Gayes or the Otis Reddings. That sort of deep soul to me. I mean, the Temptations. That's not a solo singer, but just as far as a male vocalist, some of the old time soul guys just kind of get deep in me. So I don't know that I can pick one. I mean, I might go with Marvin Gaye. Yeah.
Okay. Did you love his album What's Going On? I mean, you have to. It was a classic.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now flip it. Do you have a favorite female singer or a couple that you like to listen to?
Man, I think ZZ Ward kicks butt. She's more of a modern day singer, but if your viewers don't know ZZ Ward, look her up.
I'm gonna look her up
because she's got that blues, that rock. The lyrics work. It just kind of pulls you in. So yeah, I'm a big ZZ Ward fan.
Okay. Are you a car guy? Do you like muscle cars, sports cars, or
No.
Not into them?
No. I you know what? Whatever. I drive old beaters. I never drove anything fancy or fast because I grew up a gutter kid in Jersey. We didn't have a lot of money, so I didn't even have my own car until halfway through college when I got an old beater. So no, I'm not a car guy.
Okay. Do you have a favorite noise or sound you like to hear?
Yeah, my granddaughter laughing.
Good one. Okay.
I get a video and I get like one a day, and I will listen to my granddaughter laughing 100 times on a loop.
Okay. Now flip it. Least favorite noise or sound?
Yeah, political speeches.
Okay. Do you have a favorite food?
Got to be New York pizza.
Thank you, man of my own heart.
Got to be New York pizza. There was a good joint on the Jersey Shore in Belmar called Vesuvio's for about 45 years, but it closed
I've heard of
down. But yeah, but you get a New York slice, there's nothing like it. That's my favorite.
I'm in Indiana. Don't tell anybody. Nobody watch the show. I'm not in Indiana in Trump land. They got Chicago. Everything is Chicago pizza. Chicago pizza is like a casserole. I'm like, that's not. I mean, I'm half Italian. As you know, you take that piece of pizza, you fold it in half, you let that oil drip off. Because when I interviewed the Masalas brothers, Ben and Jordy and Brett, all the same thing. They said you got to come to Long Island, even though they're not living there no more. And this piece of paste and that, I got to take Debbie back because Anthony Scaramucci promised me he's going to take me for some good pie because I'm suffering out here. Okay. If you were to hit the lottery tomorrow for like the 200, 300, $400 million lottery, what would be the first thing you do?
I don't need a lot of money. I never had a lot of money. I don't expect I'll ever have a lot of money. When a lot of lawyers go into private practice because they want to make the big bucks. I was a government lawyer my whole life. Government lawyers don't make the big bucks, but we do what we love. We serve the people much as we serve in the Army. The Department of Justice is the people's law firm, not technically, but in a very real sense. We are the people's law firm. We're public servants. So I never had money, and that was okay. That was fine. I raised 5 daughters on one government salary. It all worked out. I think I would look, this is going to sound cliche. I would look for good charity causes, particularly causes that help underprivileged kids who otherwise don't have a chance in life. So many of them that I encountered in my work as a homicide prosecutor in DC. And if you're turned out to the streets and you're raised by the streets from the time you're 5, 7, 8, 10 years old, you're going to gravitate toward the gangs and the street crews because that's the only place you can get a sense of belonging and community and family and positive reinforcement. Even if when I say positive reinforcement, it's because you look out for the police real good. You're a good runner. You're good at, toting a gun. You got my back. But, for some of these kids, that's the only kind of so-called positive reinforcement that they get that makes them feel good. It makes them feel like they belong. It makes them feel like they're valuable, at least at doing something. Any charity that can help pull kids up out of that, I'd give them, probably 90% of whatever I got because I don't need that much.
Okay. Pre-COVID, you and the missus, did you have a favorite vacation destination?
Any place warm with a pool and a beach, any place. I'll go to I'll go to Florida. We'll go to, Cancun. We'll go any place warm. We kind of like Cabo. We've only been there a couple times, but any place warm with a beach and a pool is good by us.
Okay. Out of curiosity, do you have a hobby?
Do I have a hobby? I mean, besides working out, I'm a little bit of a workout fanatic, whether it's boxing or aerobic work, or I still try to lift weights, but light now, not heavy. Other than that, I mean, I think justice is my hobby. I mean, it's kind of my job, but justice is also my hobby. I kind of call myself at this point a free agent justice fighter, because we are at it every day trying to rally the troops, give them information. We work grassroots democracy projects. So I think justice is my passion and kind of my hobby.
Okay. Glenn, if you could meet one person from any time in life, dead or alive, who would you like to meet? And what would your first question or first talking point be for that person?
I mean, I'd love to meet Abraham Lincoln. I mean, I don't know that I have heroes in life, but people like Abraham Lincoln, people like Martin Luther King Jr., not to be cliche or kind of go to the easy ones, but I think they become cliches because so many people probably would give those kind of answers. I mean, somebody who was instrumental in ending slavery, somebody who was instrumental in the civil rights fight and the battles that were won. It would be pretty nice to be able to sit down and talk with them about their experiences, learn from their battles and their struggles and their successes. So those would be two of the people that would come to mind.
Okay. And I want to piggyback off of you picking Dr. King, which I don't think is cliche. I would like to meet Dr. King too, especially today, because I think that his voice is so needed. Somebody as strong as him is so needed today more than ever. It had to piss you off when you heard Trump do that Axios interview when the reporter Jonathan something, I can't think of his last name.
Swan, maybe.
Swan, yeah, I think so. And he brought up the Honorable John Lewis, and he belittled him. I mean, I don't care who they say. In modern day, I'm not saying that people haven't said things that might be inappropriate for them, but I've never seen anybody that would say that with nothing. I mean, it's like Mitch McConnell the other day with the line about the African Americans. It just flowed off of his tongue. As somebody that would want to meet Martin Luther King, you got to be horrified when you hear that. I'm not surprised, but still disgusted.
Everything about Donald Trump is horrifying and is disgusting. And, I don't know whether he's a racist in his heart or he simply pretends to be a racist because that panders to the people who are gullible enough to donate money to him.
Yeah.
Either way, it is as despicable as it gets. But what he has done to deepen and exploit the racial divide in this country is despicable.
It is.
And I hope we can pull ourselves out of this nosedive, Brad. I think we still can, but we're burning democracy daylight. Time is ticking, and I'm not so sure where we end up if we don't have what it takes to hold Trump and all his criminal associates accountable. It has to be done, because if it's not done, I said in a recent tweet, Donald Trump will not need Mike Pence as a running mate in 2024 because he will have the Department of Justice as his shadow running mate. Because if DOJ doesn't indict Donald Trump for his innumerable crimes, Donald Trump will wrap both arms around DOJ and say, you see, they are vouching for me. They have co-signed everything that I've done, and they have announced it was all good to go. Nothing was criminal. Why? Because if it was criminal, they would have indicted me, wouldn't they? DOJ will be Donald Trump's running mate if we let that happen.
I absolutely agree. He hugged the flag at CPAC. Ugh. Okay, with everything we discussed today, if you had to sum yourself up in a few thoughts as a human being, what would you say?
That's a big question. Boy, tough in a few thoughts, because what comes to mind are my children, 5 daughters and 1 son, 1 grandchild and counting. That is what's most important. So I think if I had to sum myself up, what's most important to me would be, he worked like hell to be the best dad and best family man he could. And he treated everybody with respect and decency and empathy. I mean, one of my favorite lines is, don't look down on a man unless you're going to help him up. And that was like my marquee bumper sticker in the U.S. Attorney's office on the top of my bulletin board, because I still had a bulletin board. Don't look down on a man unless you're going to help him up. And if we all lived our lives that way, we wouldn't be in this mess that we're in right now. Okay.
And you actually answered my last question, which I always close out my shows on, is finally, what is the saying you live your life by? I think you just said it. Beautiful saying. Beautiful. Okay. For the viewers, give them your social media platforms.
Yeah. So I'm not great at perfectly telling everybody what the name of my stuff online is, because I am incompetent. I'm bad at this stuff. But if you go on YouTube, you just put my name in, Glenn Kirschner. Technically, I think it's Glenn Kirschner 2, because when the day after I retired from the federal government, I had never been on social media, not one day in my life.
Oh, wow.
And I was trying to I'm in a hotel room in Times Square waiting to do my first appearance on MSNBC, and I'm trying to create a Twitter account. And I'm like, Glenn Kirschner, and it rejected it. Glenn Kirschner 1, rejected. Glenn Kirschner 2. So I am forever Glenn Kirschner 2. So on Twitter, I'm Glenn Kirschner 2. I think on YouTube, I may be Glenn Kirschner 2, but if you put Justice Matters with Glenn Kirschner on YouTube, you're going to find it. And then the people, if people really want to support our all volunteer thing here, because you like our mission and our content, and you want to be part of Team Justice proper, we assemble over on Patreon. That's someplace you can go, and for $1 a month or $5 or whatever, there are different levels on there. You can come over and you can support our all volunteer efforts. That's patreon.com, and you just put my name in there. Okay. We have Zoom meetings on Sunday nights. We work democracy projects. I give everybody a lot of behind the scenes stuff, which is interesting to some folk. So you can go over to patreon.com, and that's where you can go to support what it is we're trying to do here. Now, I'm not sure if I saw this or not. Do you have cups and shirts and stuff? Don't you have stuff? I got everything. We got, Team Justice. Justice is a full contact sport. We've got, so I have a merch shop, and the only reason I have a merch shop is because, as you probably know, on your YouTube channel, YouTube is like, here, you want to sign up for our merch shop? We'll do all the work for you. I'm like, yes, I do. So if you go on YouTube, you'll see on my page or channel or whatever they call it, the Justice Matters and Team Justice merchandise. And a lot of people like to go there and get the sweatshirts, the mugs, the stickers, and all that kind of stuff. So that's another way you can support our effort. Okay. A few closing thoughts. I'm going to give you the mic to close out. First of all, I appreciate, again, you coming on today. I tell my guests, and my viewers know this very, very well, my BBB crew on Twitter knows, I like to have people on that I feel are moving humanity forward. And that's what you're doing. You're moving humanity forward. You do it at a personal cost. And like I always say, it doesn't always have to equate to dollars. When you put yourself out there and you have strong opinions, you have people come after you when you can sit and not say a word. That's un-American to me. I think it's our duty to take up for this country and take up for people less fortunate than us. My father did it before me, and I'm going to do it to my last breath. You do it on your show, and I really appreciate that you, again, do it in layman terms. You interact with your, I have to tell the viewers, Glenn the other day was getting hit up with, and he's got a big account. And people don't understand, when the bigger account, it doesn't always mean you see all the tweets, because you get bombarded with notifications. I'm not complaining. I try to interact as much as I can, and you do too. But everybody's like, well, you didn't follow me. You didn't follow me. You was making everybody say, here you go. I took care of that. I took care of that. But people don't realize that you don't always see all of that, because there's so much going on. And with Trump and everything coming out, it's on to the next tweet. And how many times this happened to you, Glenn? You read a tweet and then it refreshes on you and you lost the tweet. It goes on to like 20 other, you can't find the tweet. So he's follow him on Twitter. He interacts with his viewers. You're moving humanity forward. And I personally, truly do appreciate what you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing. You're on the, as my father used to say, if you're going to be on a side of history, be on the right side. Doesn't always mean it's going to be easy. Comes at a personal cost.
But at the end of the day, you can look at the mirror and know that you made the right decisions, and not just what affects you, but what affects a large contingent of people. So with that said, again, thank you for coming on. Want to give the mic back to you. Any thoughts, any talking point, anything else you want to close out with?
Yeah, well, I appreciate all that. I appreciate your voice as well in this fight. And the thing is, we love this country. We love democracy. We believe in it. I believe it is the best system of government, but for all the others. But we have to fight for it. Just like the Constitution won't protect and defend itself.
Right.
It's up to us, and we've got to fight for it. And that's, when people say keep up the fight, Glenn, I'm like, look, up to and including with my dying breath. Because I've got kids, I've got grandkids, you got kids, and frankly, everybody, we care about everybody's kids. And if we don't fight for it, they're not going to have what we had.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to have an autocracy. They're going to have a North Korea. They're going to have a Russia, because that's the way Donald Trump wants to take us. And unfortunately, we have a whole bunch of weak Republicans who are unwilling to stand up to Donald Trump, but for a few of them. So, if you love it, then fight for it.
Okay. All right. On that note, folks, I can't say anything else. You have to fight for it. Not the way that Trump said on January 6th, for democracy. That was not a fight for democracy. That was a fight for a big lie that he keeps grifting on to raise money. So, what, I will ask you one more question. We got to come to this. Do you think that he's going to run in 2024?
No, I think he's going to be locked up.
Okay. Well, I hope you're right. I hope you're right. Okay. Well, hey, Glenn, you take care and stay safe out there. And you got access to me. You got something going on. I'll send you a link to my book with those interviews in it. I think you'll enjoy it with those guys. You got access to me anytime. All right.
Thanks, Brad. Great talking to you. Thanks for having me on.
Take care. Bye-bye. Hey, folks, that's another episode of the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show, and you can't forget about it, with another guest who is moving humanity forward, Glenn Kirschner. I knew he'd be a great guest. Make sure you tell everybody about this show, share it, like it, subscribe to the channel, leave comments below, and don't forget to follow me on Twitter at BadBradRSR. Again, it's at BadBradRSR. And remember, folks, every act of kindness is a little love we leave behind. Bad Brad out. Thank you for watching the Bad Brad Berkwitt Show. Please follow, subscribe, leave comments, forget about it, and move humanity forward.